We're first to Ivory Coast, where President Laurent Gbagbo is calling for a portion of the results from Sunday's runoff election to be cancelled because of alleged abuses by supporters of his opponent Alassane Ouattara. VOA West Africa correspondent Stearns has the story.
With vote counting well underway, most of the results are expected by Wednesday. The handful of returns from overseas voters already announced give no real indication of the shape of this race, as there are only about 10,000 ballots in an election with more than 4 million registered voters. Electoral officials say they're taking their time to ensure that the results announced will stand up to scrutiny. President Laurent Gbagbo says some of his supporters were blocked from polling stations and voting was not transparent in northern areas that back his electoral rival, former Prime Minister Alassane Ouattara. Results announced in those polling stations show Mr. Ouattara winning more than 85% of those votes. Mr. Ouattara says barricades prevented some of his supporters from voting Sunday. He says an overnight curfew imposed by President Gbagbo was meant to intimidate his supporters and opens the door for electoral officials to engage in vote fraud. Despite isolated incidents of violence and the deaths of 3 people in western Ivory Coast, election observers believe Sunday's vote was largely free and fair. Yong-Jin Choi is the UN Secretary-General's special representative for Ivory Coast.
Regarding the death, there were 3 people in the West. But I would like to underline that this violence, those troubles were localized. Overall, the majority of the Ivorian population was able to express their votes in a democratic climate.
In the western town of Gbagbo, Gbagbo supporter Somalia Savan says his vehicles were burned after the vote.
It's because of Gbagbo, because I'm his supporter. He gave me these cars, he gave me the 4-wheel drives, so they're jealous. That's why they came to break them. They didn't even take into account the policemen. They came to break everything.
Ouattara supporter Isiak Fofana says security forces are selectively enforcing the curfew, so Ouattara supporters must be prepared to defend themselves.
After the vote, we were at home respecting the curfew, but we got a phone call saying they burnt everything at our garage. So we went out to check out if this was the truth. The police came to note down the facts, and that's how we saw that the curfew is not being respected.
Businessman Olivier Constant-Behe says the violence surrounding this vote is a worrying sign for hopes of reunifying the country and restoring Ivory Coast's economic strength.
Really, that doesn't suit us at all. As business people, this is disturbing because we really placed all our hope in the situation after the elections. But after the vote yesterday, what we're hearing here and there doesn't reassure us at all.
The Electoral Commission's delay in announcing results from the first round added to voter anxiety. So officials resolved to move more swiftly this time and begin announcing results within hours of polls closing. That didn't happen. As the wait for results continues, both candidates are calling on their supporters to remain calm. Scott Stearns, VOA News, Abidjan.